Now the bit that you've all been waiting for. How much money does it make? We are left with a net monthly profit of... Hello and welcome back to yet another video. I am very excited to share this video with you because it marks a huge milestone in my life and my property career. Now in this video I'm going to be revealing my very first buy-to-let property, which as of Tuesday the 24th of October has officially been rented out. Now in this video I'm going to be giving you a look at the inside of the property. I'm going to be talking through what work was done to the property, how much I invested, and finally how much money it makes. Now before I do jump into the video, as always be sure to like, share and of course subscribe to the channel. Now without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so that was a quick look into the property. Now let's take a look at what work was done. But before we do, I want to give a little bit of backstory to this purchase. Myself and my now wife actually bought this property way back in 2016. Now the idea with this property was always to buy it, live in it, update it while we were living there, and then eventually turn it into a buy-to-let, which I can successfully say that we have done. It just took a lot longer than we were expecting. In fact, it took us 7 years to be able to get to a point where we could turn it into a buy-to-let, take money out, and then move to a bigger property. Now, if I'm being totally honest, to buy this property was probably one of the hardest things we've ever had to do from a discipline and consistency perspective.
If you tell yourself the truth that you know you could be better, you know you could do more, if you tell yourself the truth, you won't have to find discipline. Discipline will find you.
We basically had to sacrifice having a life to be able to save up the deposit to buy the property. At the time, I was just 19 and my wife was 21. Now, in order for us to be able to save the money to buy this property, we had put a stop basically to everything. We didn't go out, we didn't go on holiday, we didn't buy new clothes, we had old beat up cars, we barely spent a penny. At the time, my wife was a healthcare assistant working for the NHS and I was working for a tiny little 3-person print company. So our incomes were not really anything to write home about. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the purchase costs. We had a purchase price of £147,500. We have a deposit of £10,000, stamp duty of £450. This was back in the days when you used to have to pay stamp duty on a purchase price over £125,001. We had solicitors fees of £1,100 and we had a broker fee of £295. Luckily we didn't have a product fee to pay and we also got a home buyer survey through the mortgage company. It was an offer at the time, giving us a total purchase cost of £11,845. Okay, so now let's move on to what was done to the property, the refurbishment. So it's important to remember that all this work was done over a 7-year period of us living in the property. Now, everything that we did with the thought process that, okay, we eventually want to turn this into a buy-to-let, so we need to make sure that we're doing things that will either impact the capital appreciation, the total value of the property, or the rental income we're going to get from the property. So one of the first things we did was we got a new boiler, which cost £2,500. That included everything from removing the old water heater tank to moving the boiler from the bedroom down to the kitchen. We also redid the bathroom, which came to a total of £2,000. That included new bath, new sink, new toilet, new tiles throughout, and any other little finishing touches that come along with the bathroom. The entire house was painted from top to bottom, skirting boards, architraves, everything. That was a total of £250. That was so cheap because I did it myself to save us some cash. We had a new kitchen done, and that came in at a staggeringly low price of £1,500. Now I realise that is probably a little bit unbelievable for a kitchen, however we actually got the kitchen cabinets and doors and all that kind of stuff second hand, and they're in great condition. The remainder of that cost is actually made up on things like floor and wall tiles, bit of electrical work, new gas hob, and then the fitting of the kitchen. Next up we have the garden work. Luckily the decking was already in place because, as we know, the price of wood shot through the roof over the last few years. To get the garden to where it currently is, we basically had to strip everything back to the dirt. We had a guy with a digger come in to do that for us, level it all out, make sure everything was square. I then did the rest of laying the patio, the turf, putting the borders in, and all that good stuff. So the total for the garden came to roughly £3,000. Next up we have the most expensive, and probably something that in hindsight we wouldn't have bothered with if we knew we were going to move so quickly after having it done, and that was the garden office. My wife and I both work from home, so we needed a space dedicated to work, and obviously having a child meant that we didn't have that space now inside. Now the total cost for the garden office was £10,000. That £10,000 included everything. That's electric work, internal decoration, the base, the concrete base that it sat on, everything. So in terms of the garden office, was it worth it? Well, when we had the house valued just before we turned it into a buy-to-let, the valuer basically said that you've probably added about £10,000 worth of value to the property because you're pushing it kind of into the 3-bed, but not really in the 3-bed realm because it's separate from the house. And it doesn't have a garage, but because it has the outbuilding office, you're kind of in that realm of 3-bed / 2-bed with a garage. In terms of rental value, it pushed it up by £50 a month. So we haven't lost anything on it. If anything, it's in the long term probably a good value add to the property. Finally, we had a new consumer unit put in, which cost us £1,000. So the grand total of all that refurb work is £20,500. Moving on to the total amount of money invested in this property. So in order to turn it into a buy-to-let, there are some compliance costs, and that includes things like a gas safety certificate, which was £30, an electrical safety certificate, which was £200, a deep clean of the property, which was £215. That's not a compliance thing, that's just a good thing to do before new tenants move in. Broker fee to transfer basically from residential mortgage and sort all the paperwork and put it into a buy-to-let mortgage, £295, and finally solicitors fees of £895. So we have a grand total of £1,635. Now, to get the total amount of money invested in this property, we need to add the purchase costs, the cost of all the updates, and 7 years worth of mortgage payments, plus all of those little bits that we did to get it rental ready. So when we add all of this up, we get a grand total of £69,480. Now this for me is where property gets so exciting and really does cement in my head that I think the best way to build wealth for people, just the average person, is property. Now of course we had a lot of equity in the house because we had 7 years of capital growth and 7 years of paying down the mortgage. So the capital growth took this property from being worth £147,500 in 2016 to £210,000 in 2023. This meant that when we decided that we needed to move and we were ready to transition this into a buy-to-let, we were able to pull out £43,900, ensuring that we maintained that 25% loan to value required for most buy-to-let mortgages. So technically speaking, because we were able to pull out £43,900, it actually only cost us £3,445 to live in this property for 7 years. That obviously doesn't include all the refurb work that was done. Okay, now the bit that you've all been waiting for. How much money does it make? So to work out the gross yield, we take the monthly rental income and times that by 12. So we take 950 times that by 12 and we get £11,400. We then need to divide that by the purchase price of the property, which as we know was £147,500. giving us a gross yield of 7.7%. Now, gross yield doesn't really mean that much, especially in times of high interest rates, because it can kind of mask the reality of what's actually going on. What we really want to be looking at is the net profit of the property, the true ROI. So to get that, we need to take the monthly rent minus the operating expenses of the property. So for me, that is letting agent fees at 10%, landlord insurance at around about £35, and the mortgage interest, which for me on this property is £650. So after we take off all those expenses, we are left with a net monthly profit of £166.87p. Next, we need to times that by 12, giving us an annual profit of £2,002. Then we divide that number by the total amount of money invested in the property. Now we have to remember that I was able to pull out £43,900, meaning the actual total amount that I have left invested in this property is £25,580, giving us an ROI of 7.8%. Now, as with anything, there is a risk associated with investing, and property is no different. So I like to check the return against the average annual return of something like the FTSE 100, a comparable kind of investment vehicle. So over the last 20 years, the FTSE 100 has returned on average net 6.89%. So even against this benchmark, we're still better off having our money invested in this property. Also remember, what we do get is capital appreciation with property as well. Now I imagine there'll be a lot of questions about why did you not choose to pull the money out and invest it in a cheaper property that you probably could have got a better actual return on. And the main reason for me is that I know this property, I know the area. It's a fantastic area, especially for capital appreciation, and I also believe that when the fixed term is up, I've got a 5-year fixed term deal on this property, it is my belief that when that comes up, interest rates will not be where they are today. I genuinely believe that they will be lower, even if they're 1, 1.5, 2% lower. We're talking hundreds of pounds difference in the return that this property will net me. So I have kept this property with that belief, but who knows, I might be wrong. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of this property? Have I made the right decision? Should I have pulled my money out and put it elsewhere into a cheaper property up north somewhere? Let me know in the comments down below. Well guys, that's all from me. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video useful. As I said, let me know in the comments down below what you think of this property. Until next time, stay safe.